Let's talk about a global chess match. But instead of kings and queens, the pieces are cargo ships and shipping containers. It's a huge story about power, trade, and what the future of the global economy is going to look like. And believe it or not, it all kicks off with something you might find in your kitchen. Okay, so China loves avocados. We're talking about 66,000 metric tons a year, and most of them come all the way from Peru. Now, just try to imagine shipping a piece of fruit across the entire Pacific Ocean. For years, that trip took more than a month. You can guess what shape they were in by the time they arrived. But now, that whole journey has been cut by 10 full days. I mean, think about that for a second. For a product that can go bad, 10 days is an absolute game changer. It means fresher avocados, it means lower costs, and a way smoother supply chain. So what happened? Some kind of magical new super ship? Nope, the answer isn't a new kind of ship. It's a new kind of port, a massive megaport in Chancay, Peru, that was built and is now controlled by a Chinese state-owned company. And look, this isn't just about China getting its avocado fix. This is just one piece in a gigantic global puzzle. Which leads us to the real questions. Why is China building a worldwide empire of ports? And, should we be worried? So that port in Peru, it's not a one-off project. It's just a single dot in this huge, sprawling network that China has been quietly building for the last 2 decades. A network that now literally touches almost every corner of the globe. All told, China has invested in roughly 100 ports on every continent. Well, except Antarctica. And just look at where they are. They're all clustered around the world's most critical shipping lanes and choke points. These are the arteries of global trade. And they have poured an incredible amount of money into making this happen. Since they launched this big initiative, Chinese companies have spent over $60 billion on overseas port projects. That figure just completely dwarfs what any other country is spending. So what's driving all this spending? It's something called the Belt and Road Initiative. This is President Xi Jinping's signature global strategy. The vision is, well, it's incredibly ambitious, to build a modern-day Silk Road, a whole new network of trade that's centered on China. And if you want to control the new maritime Silk Road, you've got to control the ports. Now, it's not as simple as China just buying up ports all over the world. It's actually pretty complex. In most of these deals, Chinese firms partner up with local or multinational companies. And this is important. The land itself is almost always still owned by the local government. But in 17 of these ports, Chinese companies do hold a majority stake, and that could give Beijing a lot more direct leverage. And that idea of direct leverage is exactly what's setting off all kinds of alarm bells in Washington. Because from where the US is sitting, this whole network starts to look less like a business plan and a lot more like a strategic threat. And this really gets to the absolute heart of the whole debate. On one side, you have China framing this as a total win-win. It's great for the global economy, and it helps them secure their own supply chains. But on the other side, the US and its allies are asking a really simple, pointed question. Is that all this is about? And what you end up with are 2 completely different ways of looking at the very same thing. So where China says, hey, this is economic development, the US hears, you're trying to gain geopolitical control. Where China says, we're just securing our supply chains, the US hears, you're building a weapon to shut down global trade if a conflict ever breaks out. The key phrase that's fueling all of this anxiety is dual-use potential. The basic idea is that a commercial port built for cargo ships could very easily be used to service military vessels. And these aren't just some abstract fears. You just have to look at the African nation of Djibouti. What started as a Chinese-operated commercial port, well, it eventually became China's very first overseas military base. And this quote from a former US official really brings the concern right to America's doorstep. You see, 2 ports on either side of the Panama Canal are run by a Hong Kong-based company. Now, consider this. 40% of all US container traffic goes through that canal. So you can see why this is viewed as a direct threat to American national security. But hold on. This isn't just a 2-sided story between the US and China. There is a third and really crucial perspective here. What about the countries that are actually saying yes to all this Chinese investment? So when US officials went to Peru and criticized them for the Chancay Megaport deal, the Peruvians had a pretty simple response. Where were you? They said the US wasn't offering to make a similar investment. For countries all over Latin America, Africa, and Asia, they desperately need this kind of modern infrastructure to grow their economies. And right now, more often than not, China is the only one at the table offering to build it. And while everyone's talking about the potential for military use, it's worth taking a second to look at the reality on the ground today. This chart shows known overseas military bases. As you can see, China has 1. The United States, it has over 127. That staggering difference is a really important piece of context for understanding how the rest of the world sees this whole situation. So, where does all this leave us? What happens when you put all these pieces together? Well, what you get is a fundamental shift in how global power works. The old, clean lines that used to separate what was just business from what was national security, those lines are pretty much dissolving right before our eyes. What we're really watching here isn't just a bunch of business deals for things like avocados or minerals. This is the literal reshaping of the map of global trade. We're in a completely new era, one where a simple shipping lane is also a strategic asset, and every commercial port is a potential political tool. Which leaves us with one final, really big question to think about. As economics and geopolitics become tangled up on the high seas, does the nation that controls the ports ultimately get to control the flow of the entire world? The game is definitely on, and the board is the ocean itself.